Hi, everyone, and welcome to the second meeting of the Community Spaces Network of 2026. Can't believe we're already halfway through March. It's giving me a little bit of an existential crisis, I think, how quickly things are going. But yeah, as I said, very, very looking forward to a lovely spring, fingers crossed. I'll just introduce myself. So I'm Aimee. I'm the membership officer here at Social Enterprise Scotland, and I'm also the Rural Social Enterprise Manager at Inspiralba. Um, Joining me is Nikki from Scottish Rural Action, who helps to co-facilitate this network. It'd be great. You've already given a little bit of a sense of who's in the room, so that's great. I'll have a little look through the chat, but it's great to see so many people here today, and I think the turnout has been really good. So yeah, looking forward to getting into this today. A little bit of background to start with. So the social enterprise census consistently shows that community spaces are one of the most active areas, and a large number of members of Social Enterprise Scotland and Scottish Rural Action run vibrant and thriving community spaces. So establishing this network was quite close to our hearts, and there'd been an appetite for a network of community space practitioners for quite some time. As a result of this, we decided to set the network up in the past couple of years in partnership with Scottish Rural Action and explore a number of topics of interest, hear from key speakers, and create opportunities for connection and collaboration. We meet maybe 3 or 4 times per year, mostly online, but there's obviously kind of scope for some in person as well. So yeah, it's been going really well recently. This session is part of Village Halls Week 2026, and explores the vital role that community spaces play in Scotland's post-COVID recovery. Village halls provide warm, welcoming environments for low-pressure social contact, meaningful activities and volunteering, all proven to strengthen connection and reduce isolation. We're going to hear from two great speakers today who are going to share their experiences and expertise around the topic of tackling isolation and combating loneliness through community spaces. So we're delighted to have with us Ian Harrower from Heids and Herts, Scotland, an organisation that uses creative arts and community-led projects to support mental well-being, reduce loneliness, and empower people to feel more connected and valued. And then we also have Kenny Alexander from Polmont Community Hub, who supports their local community by creating spaces for connection, activities, and meaningful relationships. So two great speakers. Lots of experience and expertise in the room. We're going to have time after each speaker is presented for questions, but if you have any burning questions for any of the speakers before this point, then you can put them in the chat and we'll get to them as well. And then just a little bit of housekeeping before we begin. If you can keep yourself on mute unless you're speaking, then that would be ideal because it just helps to filter out the background noise. And we're also going to record this session, so if you'd rather not be in the recording, then you can let us know. Well, you can turn your camera off. Obviously, it's nice to see everyone's faces as well. The whole session won't be getting posted anywhere. We usually just cut down the presentations, and afterwards we'll send out the presentation slides with the presentation videos. And yeah, so if there's any follow-up, you can kind of get back to us then. But yes, let's begin. I'm going to just press record now because that's my cue to do that. I always forget where the record button is on Zoom. There we go. Yep, I think we're recording already. That's fine. So I'm just going to start by setting the context a little bit before we go into the speakers as well. So loneliness has become an increasingly important issue in Scotland, particularly since the COVID-19 pandemic. While loneliness isn't a new issue, the pandemic brought it into sharper focus and revealed how essential social connection and community spaces are to people's well-being. According to the Scottish Government, through the Scottish Household Survey, around 20% of adults in Scotland reported feeling lonely at least some of the time in the previous week. This was a study that was done in 2024. This is a slight improvement from 23% in 2022, when loneliness rose after the pandemic, but it still means that around 1 in 5 adults experience loneliness on a regular basis. The same research also showed that social habits have changed since COVID-19. In 2024, 68% of adults reported meeting socially with friends, relatives, neighbours, or colleagues at least once a week. Before the pandemic in 2018, that figure was at 73%. So, in other words, even though restrictions have ended, people are still meeting others less frequently than they did before the pandemic. Loneliness also doesn't affect everyone equally. Some groups experience it much more strongly than others. The Scottish Household Survey found that both the youngest and oldest age groups have reported the highest loneliness levels. Around 23% of young people aged 16 to 24 and 25% of people aged 75 and over reported feeling lonely in the past week during that study. There are also strong links between loneliness and inequality. So people living in the most deprived areas of Scotland were more than twice as likely to experience loneliness compared with those living in least deprived areas. Disabled people were also more than twice as likely to report loneliness as non-disabled people. Household structure is another important factor. So people who live alone are significantly more likely to experience loneliness. In Scotland today, living alone is becoming more common. Data from the National Records of Scotland show that over 1/3 of households, so around 38%, consist of a single person living alone. In total, this represents almost 1 million people in Scotland living by themselves. Looking ahead, the trend is expected to continue. So projections suggest that more than 1 million people in Scotland could be living alone by 2032, driven largely by an aging population and changing household patterns. For older adults in particular, loneliness can be a major issue. Research by Age Scotland found that 46% of people over the age of 50 reported experiencing loneliness some or all of the time. The report describes loneliness as something that can exist on every street in Scotland. And it's not just about feeling isolated socially, it also has clear impacts on health and well-being. So research from the Mental Health Foundation found that around a quarter of adults in Scotland reported feeling lonely some or all of the time, and 31% said loneliness had negatively affected their mental health. Feelings of loneliness were also linked to anxiety and reduced well-being. These statistics help illustrate why tackling loneliness is not simply a social issue, it is also a community well-being and public health issue. This is where community spaces become incredibly important. So community centres, libraries, cafes, halls, gardens, and local hubs provide something that can't be replaced by digital connection alone. Informal, everyday opportunities to meet other people. Community spaces allow people to take part in activities, volunteer, attend events, or simply spend time around others. For someone who might live alone or feel isolated, even small amounts of connection, a conversation, a shared activity, or a sense of belonging can make a meaningful difference. Community spaces also play an important role in reaching people who might be otherwise excluded from social networks. For example, older people, disabled people, carers, and those living in deprived areas often benefit more from accessible local spaces where connection can happen naturally. Importantly, community spaces are not just about services, they're about relationships and belonging. They provide the environments where friendships form, trust develops, and communities support each other. In a time when social patterns are shifting, with more people living alone and meeting less frequently than before the pandemic, the role of community spaces becomes even more vital. If loneliness is about disconnection, then community spaces are one of the most powerful tools we have to rebuild connection. They help move people from isolation to connection, from simply living in a neighbourhood to truly feeling part of a community. So with that context set, I think that's a good time to hand over to Ian from Heids and Herts, Scotland, to tell us a little bit about the work that they do.
Thank you very much. Well, listen, I'll just really sort of hopefully continue where Aimee was setting the scene there, the backdrop, and give you a kind of little thumbnail of the journey we've been on here at Heids and Herts in North East Fife and the East Nook. My name's Ian Harrower, and I'm the chair of Heids and Herts Scotland. And I'd like to kind of begin, I suppose, with a question which had us, which was really at the kind of core of how we began our work with Heids and Herts, and it was where do people meet? What's that? Sorry, I've mixed that up. But where would your neighbours meet? Where would people get together in your community? And I guess that's where we started our journey in 2020 in the middle of lockdown. And the next slide. We're a small volunteer-run charity established and incorporated in 2021, and we're working across North East Fife and the East Nook. I make a distinction there because we kind of started off considering ourselves to be in North East Fife until once I was speaking with some fisher folk in Ainster and Anstruther, who said, but we're not North East Fife, we're the East Nook, which showed a real distinction across some invisible boundaries that are just cultural and historical. And I'm sure that in your areas you'll have come across that as well. But it was a reminder of us not to just think about an area as one homogenous space. It's a real mosaic, and you've got to understand it. Anyway, we focus on strengthening community connection. Our big aim, and it's a big one, and we're a very, very small volunteer-led organisation, is making a contribution to reducing social isolation, which is what Aimee was giving us the background on. We see our role as supporting grassroots organisations with historic links in their communities. We trying to encourage participation in community life and arts and creative opportunities, bringing people together. So listen, let me give a little personal story. Back in 1985, I was involved in setting up a business in Auchtermuchty. Auchtermuchty is a kind of very good example of a kind of rural town in Scotland, and particularly in Fife. Famous, of course, for Jimmy Shand, the musical legend, and the Proclaimers grew up in Auchtermuchty as well. So the kind of two bookends there of Scottish cultural life, from Jimmy and his dance band to the Proclaimers. But we should also give a shout out to Archibald Finlay, who invented the blight-free potato from Auchtermuchty as well. Anyway, back in 1985, we had a thriving community. There was a couple of banks, 5 pubs, all the attributes of community life and services that are all shown there, including 4 large employers from textiles to engineering. And so people worked and lived and kind of, a complete sort of cradle to grave experience in terms of their life in Auchtermuchty, with the added sprinkle of a world-class folk festival that happened every year, and definitely being conscious of a rich, tight and very active community. And then we fast forward. So by 2020, when we started having a conversation, and things had really, really changed. And again, I'm sure that's a familiar picture for lots of rural Scotland and across the UK. So services centralised and reduced, had closed some of the things down. Local employers had all disappeared. The bus services, had been restricted. The pubs had all gone, and there was fewer everyday gathering places. So it was not just that services lost, but places where people could naturally meet their neighbours had disappeared. And so the community centre and the village hall in Auchtermuchty now become really important spaces, because they're filling in the gaps of where those other assets used to be. And I guess in Village Halls Week, that's again very common across North East Fife and the East Nook. And the next slide, please. A lesson from lockdown, I guess, that we all experienced was that human beings are social animals. And there's lots of evidence, which Aimee was touching on, which shows that social connection is essential for our mental health and well-being. And this strong sense of place and belonging is hugely important for all of us, and particularly when we look at loneliness and isolation. what we discovered in lockdown was connection's not a luxury, it's a human need. Next slide. So our landscape here, we've got around 30 to 35 villages and settlements. There's hamlets and not quite a village. One of our smallest communities is Burnturk, which is population 20 plus 4 children, and they have village hall as well. So we've got these things outside the big towns of Cooper and St Andrews with, of course, its university and a little thing called golf that goes on. It's the largest geographic area in Fife, which goes from the River Tay to the River Forth, and it has lots of traditional farmland in the middle, and then fishing settlements and ecclesiastical down the coast. We have around about 25 village halls and community spaces, and that's a kind of changing dynamic. The Church of Scotland have been selling off a lot of local churches recently, and so we've got a number of campaigns that are going on where local communities are looking to take over the churches and run them as community spaces. We've also got some old swimming pools that have been taken over, and some bars and local cafes that are they're also community run. So those shared civic spaces, and many of them are run by volunteers. We've got about 10 of that 25 that are run still by the council, and the council are in consultation with some of the communities about taking spaces over, and that's increasingly happens. And the other half are run by the communities themselves. Our next slide. And these are just thoughts and ideas are things that we've come across. We support grassroots initiatives and projects. I guess really our focus was on not trying to repeat what was happening in communities, but try to support and work with established community groups. And that's kind of where I guess we, as a small organisation, as volunteers, can see our try and do the maximum impact with our resource and abilities. We also host an annual Creative Spaces conference, and we're very proud of that we kind of initiated bringing everyone together. So that kind of sense of everyone being in the same boat, but there's not a lot of time for people to actually spend time comparing notes. And so our annual Creative Spaces conference, we bring people together for knowledge sharing, collaboration and new ideas. But I think it's also an emotional renewer for people who just, we're not alone here, that everybody's wrestling with a lot of the same the challenges that we have. And a big shout out to the volunteers who do that. And I know from our little group how hard it is to recruit new volunteers and keep volunteers engaged. Is difficult for many reasons. So we're completely amazed and privileged to witness what amazing stuff that volunteers do in every nook and cranny across North East Fife and East Nook. Next slide. Loneliness, as Aimee is saying, is this backdrop of the challenge of loneliness, and particularly surprising when you look at the figures for 16 to 24-year-olds, which Aimee highlighted. And there's lots of really good data around that from Campaign to End Loneliness and various other statuses, locations that Aimee already mentioned. So move on from that. And amongst all this, there's fantastic work going on in the communities, from food banks and warm spaces, children's clubs, repair workshops, right across the board. We're always, our hearts warm when you just hear about new ideas and the enthusiasm and energy that communities they do. These arts festivals and cultural events, that get people, bring the whole community together, are vital components. Keeping the village hall's lights on are vital. Keeping the roof repaired are vital. And they are, I think we're kind of making a case here that, given that we've seen so many other things disappear, they're often the really main community asset, which is phenomenal. And so very, very important. There we go. Next slide. I was in Japan last month. I got the privilege of spending some time in Southeast Asia. And in Okinawa, I visited one of the blue zones, much vaulted, where the average age is 94. People are still very healthy and active as these blues went. There's three broad factors that they came across which contribute to the world's blue zones, healthy diet being one of them. But it was strong social connections and sense of purpose. So two of those are rooted in community life. And I guess that's what your organisations are involved in, and what we've seen here at Heids and Herts in North East Fife, that these dimensions of being connected, a sense of place, a sense of communal responsibility, and these are vital parts of our health and well-being, and essential parts of these. Lo and behold, would you guess it, these blue zones where people live long and happy lives and healthy lives. There we go. And moving on. Community space generate all these kind of intangible but very tangible things like trust and belonging and inclusion and participation, the strong social networks, the solidarity, mutual support, and the foundations of healthy and resilient communities. Absolutely vital. And next. And final reflections. And I'm sorry if I've gone over my time, I was just rushing through this. But we've seen service close, I guess, a backdrop of kind of community life under attack by the way we sort of set ourselves up to live now. You can have Netflix and all these different things on streaming and social networking and everything else. And yet we do want to feel like we're part, and we can part of a tangible place. And so community spaces, village halls are spaces where people can meet safely, access support, create and celebrate together. They form the foundation of community cohesion, and they're supported by these amazing volunteers whose resilience keeps the lights on. If we want healthier communities, we must protect the spaces and the volunteers that make connection possible. There we go. That's me. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Ian. That was really, really interesting. And thanks for everyone for your questions. I'm going to hand over now to Kenny, if you're okay to start. And Nikki, hopefully the tech gremlins are on our
we'll
side.
give it a go.
I'm Kenny. I'm from Polmont Community Hub. And basically, at the lockdown, at the end of lockdown, I was completely lonely, and I was transitioning away from the oil industry, and I became a spokesperson for the Just Transition for Oil Workers movement. But that was nothing to do with this community centre and where I am now. I just wanted to tie in with the lockdown situation, because that's what this is about, tackling loneliness. And I'm very much, I love gigs. I love the Herts and Heids. I was very jealous of their website, and they're doing some amazing stuff. But I love music. I'm part of Falkirk Writers Circle. I love literature, and I'm part of Polmont Joggers. So I was part of the running community, part of the writing community, music community. And at the lockdown, it just felt like we were never going to get these things back. It was terrible. It was horrendous. We thought that life would never return to normal. And then my local community centre, where I held my 30th birthday party, and where my son grew up in the garden, and we joined so many different groups, from the playgroup to the joggers, etc., was up for closure due to it not being able to reach net zero targets. The energy performance rating was the worst in the district. So I got myself involved with saving the centre from closure, and which we've done now. And we've taken it from being council owned and managed to being community owned, managed and operated now. And I'm just checking my notes. We co-manage the place day to day. So I see the social interactions and importance that this place has on people. Had the centre closed, there's over 30 groups meet here. Some of them, like for example, the church that meets on a Sunday morning, there's hundreds of people attend. The different groups that meet here are wide ranging, from sports groups to reading, art, hobbycraft, and these groups, for example, the exercise classes are way more than that. They're a support network. When bereavements happen or loved ones are ill, these classes all interconnect with each other. They're all there for each other. So we recently got, and as you can see the picture in the slide there, that box of slate and wooden tiles was given to us by Strathcarron Hospice. And it was kind of a way to sort of say, like, you know, when people leave loved ones at the hospice for the last time and they're alone in the world, what are we doing to help those individuals? So as you can see in the picture there, we held this. This was an event that the local council paid for us. It was last week which was the Stronger Communities Week, and the council paid for it to gather groups together. And we gathered our groups together. So as I said earlier, there's over 30 groups here, but they normally never meet each other. You know, one group's in on a Tuesday afternoon, and they don't meet the group that's there on a Wednesday. So this was the sort of first time that many of these groups actually met each other, and how we're all part of this same community. So it was a wider community outreach to make our community stronger, because that's one of the things that we had to define for our funders when we first got established was, what is your community? So as I said earlier, I mean, I met my partner at a music festival. I'm very much gigs and music. I'm also part of the running community, but that's not the community that I live in. So is that my community? And that's what this is, the community of Polmont Community Hub, coming together with the various different communities, the health and fitness and mental health and wellbeing. We have, since we took over from council management, we've massively increased the amount of groups that meet here and the number of people attending the groups. And we did this sort of brief survey. Well, Claire designed it. There's not many participants in these pie charts, but if you see, if you go to the next slide, Nikki, you can see the difference. Like 100% of people said that it would have a devastating effect on them if this centre had not stayed open. And look at the benefits. Do you think Polmont Community offers? It's just the statistics speak for themselves, that people, when they've got a community space to gather, they feel much more connected and less socially isolated. We have tackled ourselves the social mental health and well-being of the area, because suicides are on the increase. People are feeling more isolated, and I think it's 1 in 4 households suffer the effects of mental health and well-being issues. And in the past, when they attend the local health centre, the doctors would prescribe them medication, and we are hoping that in the future, what the local health centre will offer will be what's known as the green social prescription. So if you go to the doctors and you've got an issue with loneliness, then we'll be hoping that the doctor prescribes come down to Polmont Community Hub's gardening group or their sewing group or their the repair cafe, you know, all the new things that we've got going. A good example of that was we started a tinnitus group. And the person that came and asked us to start the tinnitus group, he said he's a recent sufferer and he went to his doctor and there was no place, there was no support for tinnitus locally. So we started a group. And if we start a group here at the hub, then we make sure we're very proud of our inclusivity. And that includes the price. We are not exclusively a place for the wealthy. So we make sure that any group that comes down to us to support this community can get this space. And we'll support them in every way we can. That's the aim in the future, is that we had a three-phase business plan. That the first part of the business plan is Ian was talking about earlier, was to keep the lights on and the doors open, save the place from closure. Well, we smashed that. We totally smashed that. We're now been operating for 18 months as a successful not-for-profits charity. But it's all done with unpaid volunteers. And the second part of our business plan was to transition the energy away and make it future-proof it so that the bills are nothing. If we've got no bills, then we can continue to offer a free space to groups that need support. And that's the third stage of the business plan, where, as I mentioned earlier on, with the green social prescription. So this is a small and medium enterprise, like Ian's involved with the East Newquay Fife, with many small to medium enterprises, all struggling towards net zero targets. And they've got bills to pay. And how we do it, this is a social enterprise meeting up here, and we've got here the buy social cars that come with presents with a purpose. So we're hoping that, for example, our Christmas fair this year will be the groups that meet here will make their cards and make their clothes and all of these good things that will fix at the repair cafe, etc. And we'll sell these at our craft fairs, and all that will be buy presents with a purpose, and all the money made from these will get fed back into the community, part of the circular economy. We're very much part of the. I am part of the Transition International Network, and we're holding a community soup event this weekend, and that is it's a green participatory budgeting event. That's a very complex, long word, but basically what that means is we've got a pot of money to give away for our community, and we have got some projects that are going to come along to the soup night, and they're going to say, this is our project, and we want money for this, that, and then at the end of that, we'll all have soup and bread and talk about the projects, and that'll help kickstart them, and then we'll have a vote on them. And then the winning person gets, the winning project gets all the money from the soup pot, and it will bring the community together, and we'll make sure that the money that gets generated from that gets spent in an environmentally friendly way, as in it's only for projects that are good for people and planet. So that's where we are. The important slide in there is showing how the benefits of the hub to this community are growing day to day. And as Ian was saying earlier, it's not just about communities losing village halls. They're losing their banks, they're losing their post offices. And the first and second sectors of society, the NHS and the fire brigade and the police, they're all getting less and less funding. So us in the third sector, as unpaid volunteers, are needing to step up a little bit, and that's what we're doing here. So yeah, I think I've talked for long enough now. I think everybody knows what we're up to, and yeah, I'll open it up for questions.
Thanks so much, Kenny. That was, again, really interesting, and it's great to hear what's going on Polmont Community Hub. Thank you. Lots of good stuff coming in the chat. So we will make sure that when the notes are written up, any links and things that are in the chat are included as well, because there's been a lot of good conversation. But thank you. I think that's us finishing basically just on time there, unless anyone has anything else. Thanks so much again to Ian and Kenny for coming along and giving their time. It's really, really appreciated. I think it's really important to hear those real life examples and these community space practitioners that are doing such good work in this really challenging space as well, in these really challenging times. So thanks everyone, and thanks everyone else for coming along as well, and taking time out of your day to spend time with us. But yes, we will get all these, we'll get all the slides out, we'll get the videos clipped, and we'll get the notes shared out, and we'll share any updates about next community space network sessions and the health and wellbeing network sessions as well.
It sounds like community wealth building might be a good topic based on the chat. So if people are interested, perhaps we could think about that, how that could work.